Hello everyone, hope you are doing well. This is part 10 of Rhetoric or Figures of Speech series. I hope by now you have watched the previous videos on rhetoric. In this video, I shall discuss a few important questions for honors students. Let's start with the questions. The first one. I cannot rest from travel. I will drink life to the lees. All times I have enjoyed greatly, have suffered greatly, both with those that loved me and alone on shore, and when through scudding drifts the rainy heights vexed the dim sea, I am become a name. So you have to identify and explain the figures of speech in the following passage. So there are several figures of speech in the given passage. There is a case of hyperbole in I will drink life to the lees. Here an exaggeration is seen in the statement. There is also a case of metaphor in the sentence. I will drink life to the lees. Here, two unallied objects, life and the lees of the drink, are compared. The comparison is in regard to the enjoyment of drink. The point of comparison is implied here. There are also two cases of antithesis in the given passage. In the first place, two contrasted ideas are have enjoyed greatly and have suffered greatly. They are placed together in a balanced form for the sake of emphasis. In the second place, the contrasted ideas are both with those that loved me and alone, which are placed in a balanced form to emphasize the nature of the speaker's experience. There is an instance of vision in through scudding drifts the rainy heights vexed the dim sea. So, in this sentence or in the expression, you will find that it has presented the whole scene with a lifelike representation. Next, there are two cases of transferred epithets in the expression rainy heights and dim sea. In the first place, rainy has been transferred to heights, and second, in the second place, dim has been transferred to the sea, but both of them originally belong to the atmosphere. Next, there is a case of personification also. Here, Hyades, a natural element, a constellation of stars, is invested with the attribute of a living being in the verb vexed. The sea is also personified here in the word vexed. There is also a case of epigram in the sentence I am become a name. A contradiction or apparent contradiction exists in the meaning. For how I, that is here obviously Ulysses, even if you don't know the name of the character, you can understand that here uh, I, the speaker, could become a name that has been said. This shocking expression carries an inner significance to indicate that he has become a great figure in history. Okay, but in the apparent meaning of the sentence, there is a contradiction. I am become a name. There is also a case of allusion in Hyades. Here, the word Hyades recalls the ancient belief that a group of stars called Hyades would bring rains. So, these are the figures of speech that you find in this passage. Next, but every hour is saved from that eternal silence, something more, a bringer of new things, and while it were for some 3 suns to store and hold myself, and this grey spirit yearning in desire to follow knowledge like a sinking star beyond the utmost bound of human thought. Here, uh, you will find several figures of speech in the passage. The first one, eternal silence, is a case of euphemism. What happens in euphemism? In the euphemism, a harsh or disagreeable statement is softened down and made agreeable in order to spare one from a shock. So here, death is expressed in a pleasant and agreeable way by the expression eternal silence. Right? Next, there is a personification in every hour is saved from that eternal silence, something more, a bringer of new things. Here, the abstract idea hour is invested with the attribute of a living being in bringer. Okay, hour has been referred to as a bringer of new things. Okay, next, 3 suns. In this expression, there is a case of periphrasis. So here 3 years is expressed in a roundabout way by 3 suns. And this is also a case of metonymy. 3 suns indicate the revolving of the sun for 3 times round the earth. This is the cause and the effect of the completion of 3 years according to the old belief system, right? So this is the case of the cause for the effect. There is a case of personification in this grey spirit yearning in desire. Here, spirit, an abstract idea, is invested with the attribute of a living being in the expression yearning in desire. Next, to follow knowledge like a sinking star. This is a case of simile. Here, the comparison is between two unallied objects, knowledge and sinking star, and the point of comparison is clearly expressed through the word like. There is a vision in sinking star. An imaginary picture is presented as really seen. Next, there are 2 cases of hyperbole in the passage. In the first place, there is an exaggeration in statement, but every hour is saved. And in the second place, an exaggerated statement exists in to follow knowledge like a sinking star beyond the utmost bound of human thought. Next, there is hyperbaton in while it were for some 3 suns to store and hold myself. So the regular grammatical order has been reversed here. The regular grammatical order of words, that is, it were while to store and hold myself for some 3 suns, is inverted here in the passage. There is also a case of personification in the phrase sinking star. Star, which is an inanimate object, is invested with the attribute of a living being in the sinking. Next, I'm moving on to the next question. Drive my dead thoughts over the universe like withered leaves to quicken a new birth, and by the incantation of this verse, scatter as from an unextinguished hearth, ashes and sparks, my words among mankind. Be through my lips to unawakened earth the trumpet of a prophecy. O wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? So there are several figures of speech in this passage. Number one, dead thoughts is a case of personification. Thought, which is an abstract idea, is given here the attributes of a living being in the word dead. Next, drive my dead thoughts over the universe. In this line, there is a case of hyperbole. So, in the present case, the statement is an exaggerated one because it is too much to say that drive my dead thoughts over the universe. Okay. Next, there are several cases of simile. Here, in the first place, two unallied objects are compared, dead thoughts and withered lips, and the point of comparison is made clear through the word like. In the second place, there is a comparison between two unallied objects, ashes and sparks, and my words. The point of comparison is made clear through the word as. Okay. In the expression unawakened earth, there is a case of personification. Here, earth, an element of nature, is invested with the attribute of a living being in the word unawakened. Next, unawakened earth is also a case of metonymy. Earth is here used to substitute the inhabitants of earth. This is a case of the container for the thing contained. Next, be through my uh, be through my lips to unawakened earth the trumpet of a prophecy is a case of metaphor. In this case, two unallied objects, the trumpet and prophecy, are compared, and the point of comparison is implied. Next, there is a case of apostrophe in O wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? So here, a short and impassioned address is made to the west wind, a natural object, thinking the same to be living and listening to the speaker. Next, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? This is a case of interrogation. Here, a forceful question is put forward. The answer is implied and obviously supplied by the very question. Next, there is an antithesis in the expression also. Here, two contrasted ideas are comes and be far behind. They are placed together in a balanced form. The purpose is to emphasize the coming or arrival of spring. Next, there are personifications of winter and spring, natural phenomena in the verbs, comes and can be. Okay. So these are the figures of speech that we find in this passage. Now I am moving on to the next question. Oh, lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud. I fall up in the thorns of life. I bleed. A heavy weight of hours has chained and bowed one too like thee, tameless and swift and proud. So in this passage, there is a case of exclamation in the sentence, in the line, oh, lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud. It is preceded by an interjection "oh" and bears a mark of exclamation at the end. So, in the present case, the poet emotionally expresses his desire to be lifted as a wave, a leaf, a cloud. So, this is preceded by the interjection "oh" and ends with a sign of exclamation. The next, in the same line, we find another figure of speech, that is apostrophe. So here the poet makes an impassioned address to the west wind, a natural object, thinking it to be living and listening to him. Next, "oh, lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud" is also a case of accendated. Here, the connecting conjunction "and" is omitted before the last word. Next, "I fall upon the thorns of life." This is a case of metaphor. Here, two unallied objects, thorns and life, are compared, and the point of comparison is implicit. Next, "a heavy weight of hours has chained and bowed." This is a case of personification. Here, weight of hours, an abstract idea, is given the living attribute in the verbs chained and bound. Next, this is also a case of synecdoche. Here, the term hours is used to substitute time. So, this is a case of the part for the whole. Next, this is also a metaphor. Here, two unallied objects or elements, weight and hours, are compared, and the point of comparison is implied. Next, tameless and swift and proud is a case of polysyndeton. There is an excessive use of the connecting conjunction "and" to secure an increased emphasis. Next, there are several cases of simile in the passage. In the first place, "me," that is the speaker or the poet, is compared to wave, leaf, and cloud. All these are unallied objects, like the poet, and these natural objects are unallied, and the comparison is shown clearly through the word "as." In the second place, again, "one," that is the speaker or the poet, "one," has been compared with "the," that is the natural element, the west wind, two unallied objects, and the point of comparison is explicitly shown through the word "like." One, two, like thee in this expression. Okay. So these are the figures of speech that we find in this passage. Now I am moving on to the next question. "Not with more glories in the ethereal plain, the sun first rises over the purpled main, than issuing forth the rival of his beams, launched on the bosom of the silver Thames." In this passage, there are several figures of speech. Number one, ethereal plane is a case of periphrasis. Here, sky is expressed in a roundabout way through the expression ethereal plane. Again, purpled main indicates indirectly the sea. So, this is also a case of periphrasis. There is a metaphor in silver Thames. The two unallied objects compared here are silver and Thames. The point of comparison is implied. Then, in the expression, the rival of his beams, this is a case of hyperbole. The expression here is indeed an exaggerated one. So, a human being, a lady, is compared the mm, with the beams of the sun. Next, on the bosom of the silver Thames, this is a case of personification. In Thames, a natural object is given the attributes of a living being in the word bosom. Next, the whole passage is also a case of vision. Here, like the vision is the lifelike representation of an absent or imaginary scene as real or happening just before the speaker. So here, the entire scene is very vividly represented through words. Next, not with more glories is also a case of hyperbole. The expression is exaggerated. These are the figures of speech that we find in this passage. Next question is, here Britain's statesmen oft the fall foredoomed of foreign tyrants and nymphs at home. Hear thou, great Anna, whom the three realms obey, dost sometimes counsel take and sometimes tea. In this passage, there is an alliteration in fall foredoomed. So here the letter F is repeated at the beginning of successive words fall and foredoomed. Next, nymphs is a case of periphrasis. Here, English virgins are expressed in a roundabout way through the phrase nymphs at home. The word home is a case of synecdoche here. Here, England is substituted by home. This is the case of the part for the whole. Home is the part of the whole England. Anna is a case of allusion. Here, Anna brings to one's mind the reign of the Queen Anne of England. Next, hear thou, great Anna, is a case of apostrophe also. Here, an impassioned address is made to Anna, that is Queen Anne, an absent person. This address is short and impulsive. The poet imagines that she is present and listening to him. Next, three realms obey is a case of personification. So here realms, some abstract idea, are given the attributes of a living being in the verb obey. Next, three realms is also a case of metonymy. Here realms, kingdoms, that realms means kingdoms, so are substituted for the people of the three kingdoms. This is the case of the container for the thing contained. Next, this is also a case of periphrasis. For the expression three realms gives the sense of England, Ireland, and Scotland in a roundabout way. Next, the expression dost sometimes counsel take and sometimes tea is a case of hyperbaton. An inversion of the regular grammatical order of words is seen in the sentence. Instead of using the correct grammatical order, that is, dost take sometimes counsel, the poet has used dost sometimes counsel take. There is also a case of pallilogia in the last line, as here the word sometimes has been repeated twice in the same line. So this is pallilogia. Now I'm moving on to the next question. Oh, for a draught of vintage that hath been cooled a long age in the deep delved earth, tasting of flora and the country green, dance and provincial song and sunburnt mirth. So, the whole passage is an example of exclamation. This is like in the present case, the poet expresses his intense desire to taste and enjoy a specific type of wine. There is an interjection O. The passage starts with the interjection O and it ends with the exclamation mark. There is a periphrasis in the expression drought of vintage. Here, wine is expressed in a roundabout way by drought of vintage. Next, deep delved earth is also a case of periphrasis. Here, underground cellar is expressed in a roundabout way through the words deep delved earth. Next, there is also an alliteration of D in deep and delved. The same letter D is repeated at the beginning of successive words. Next, flora is a case of allusion here. Here, the expression flora brings to the mind the Roman goddess of flowers, Flora, and the festivity connected with her. Next, dance and provincial song and sunburnt mirth. This is a case of polysyndeton, in which an excessive use of the connecting conjunction and is made. Next, sunburnt mirth is a case of the transferred epithet. Sunburnt, which originally belongs to face or human beings, that is not mentioned here. It has been transferred to mirth. Next, there is a metonymy in sunburnt mirth. Here, the rays of the sun is substituted by the sun. This is a case of the cause for the effect. Now, I am moving on to the next question. Forlorn, the very word is like a bell to toll me back from thee to my sole self. Adieu, the fancy cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. So there is an exclamation in the expression forlorn. The very word is like a bell to toll me back from thee to my soul self. This is an expression of emotion. There are the signs of exclamations after forlorn and self. And next, the very word is like a bell is a case of simile. There is a comparison between two unallied objects, word and bell. The point of comparison is clearly expressed through the word like. Next, the very word is like a bell is also a case of hyperbole. The given expression is an exaggerated one. There are three cases of personification in the passage. In the first case, very word, an abstract idea, is given the attributes of a living being in the verb toll. In the second place, fancy, an abstract idea, is given the attributes of a living being in the expression she is famed to do. Next, soul self is a case of alliteration. Here the letter S has been repeated at the beginning of the successive words soul and self. There is a metaphor in the expression fancy cannot cheat so well as he is famed to do deceiving else. Here, the comparison is made between two unallied elements, fancy and elf, and the point of comparison is implied. There is another exclamation in the passage, adieu. The expression is one of desire. There is an interjection, adieu, in the beginning, and there is also a note of exclamation at the end. Okay, so these are the figures of speech that we find in this passage. Now I am moving on to the next one. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. So here there is in the first line there is a case of polysyndeton in tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. There is the excessive use of the connecting conjunction and to secure force and emphasis. Next, there is also a case of pallilogia in the expression. Here, the word tomorrow is repeated in the sentence. Next, there is a personification in tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps. So, tomorrow, an abstract idea, is invested with the attributes of a living being in the verb creeps. Next, there are alliterations of P in petty and pace, and of D in dusty and death. In both the cases, the words are successive. Next, a periphrasis is found in the last syllable of recorded time. Here, doomsday is expressed in a roundabout way. Next, the expression yesterdays have lighted fools is a personification. Yesterday, an abstract idea, is given the attributes of a living being in the expression have lighted. Next, this expression is also a hyperbole. The statement is indeed exaggerated because it is too much to say that yesterdays have lighted fools. Next, there is a transferred epithet in the expression way to dusty death. The epithet dusty is transferred from way to death. So the way is dusty, not death. Next, there is a metonymy in dusty death. Death is used here to substitute grave. This is a case of the cause for the effect. So death is the cause and the effect is the burial in the grave. So instead of saying dusty grave, the poet has mentioned death, which is the cause. So this is a metonymy, a case of the cause for the effect. Okay. Now I am moving on to our next question. Grant me an old man's frenzy, myself must I remake, till I am Timon and Lear, or that William Blake who beat upon the wall till truth obeyed his call. So there is an alliteration of M in myself and must. The same letter M is repeated at the beginning of successive words. There is a hyperbaton in the line myself must I remake. So the correct grammatical order, which should be I must remake myself, is inverted here. There are examples of synecdoche in Timon and Lear. Here, Timon and Lear are said, but the impulsive tragic character is meant. They signify the class of such characters, tragic characters. This is the case of the individual for the class. There are the instances of allusion also in Timon, Lear, and Blake. Timon, Lear, and Blake bring to one's mind these very characters of the past. Timon and Lear are the tragic characters of Shakespeare's plays, Timon of Athens and King Lear, respectively, and William Blake is a notable English poet. There is a personification in Till truth obeyed his call. Truth, an abstract idea, is given the attribute of a living being in the verb obeyed. Next, there is a vivid representation of an absent picture in Who Beat Upon the Wall. So, this is a case of vision also. Okay. So these are the figures of speech that we find in this passage. Now I'm moving on to the next question. Out, out, brief candle. Life is but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour up on the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. So, first, there is a pallilogia in out, out, brief candle. So, the word out is repeated in the same sentence here. Next, there is an apostrophe in the very expression. So, a short, impassioned address is made to brief candle, an inanimate object, imagining this as living and listening to the speaker. Next, there is a periphrasis in brief candle. Life is expressed here in a roundabout way through the word brief candle. There are two metaphors in life is but a walking shadow, a poor player. Like there are implied comparisons between life and walking shadow, two unallied objects or elements, and life and poor player, two again two unallied elements. And the point of comparison is definitely implied here. There is a synecdoche in the word hour. This is substituted for the span of life. This is a case of the part for the whole. Next, there are hyperboles the expression in the expressions life is but a walking shadow and it is a tale. It is a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. So, because it is too much to characterize life as a walking shadow or call it a tale. Next, there is an epigram in it is a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. The expression has a contradiction in its apparent meaning, for how a tale full of sound and fury can signify nothing. This contradiction is shocking, but it gives rise to an inner sense that life consists of much ado about absolutely nothing. Next, sound and fury has Hendiadys. Okay. Two nouns, sound and fury, are joined by and. One of them, fury, acts as an adjective and the complete sense that is conveyed here is furious sound. Okay? So these are the figures of speech that we find in this passage. Now I am moving on to the next question. Base fortune, now I see that in thy wheel there is a point to which, when men aspire, they tumble headlong down. That point I touched, and seeing there was no place to mount up higher, why should I grieve at my declining fall? So again, there are several figures of speech here. The first one, there is an apostrophe in base fortune, now I see. So a short impassioned address is made here to fortune, an abstract idea, imagining this as living and listening to the speaker. Next, there is a metaphor in base fortune, now I see that in thy wheel. So an implied comparison is made here between two unallied objects, fortune and wheel. Next, there is a hyperbaton in the expression they tumble headlong down. The correct grammatical order of words they tumble down headlong has been inverted here. Next, there is a hyperbole in seeing there was no place to mount up higher. So the statement is an exaggerated one. Next, there is an interrogation in the last line. Why should I grieve at my declining fall? The interrogation consists in putting a question, and the answer to which is obvious and implied in the very question. Here, the answer is implied, that I should not grieve. Okay. Next, there is a transferred epithet in declining fall. The epithet declining is transferred to fall, but it originally belongs to the speaker. There is a relation between the speaker and his fall. So these are the figures of speech that we find in this passage. Now I am moving on to the next question. Some village Hampden that with dauntless breast the little tyrant of his fields withstood. Some mute inglorious Milton here may rest, some Cromwell guiltless of his country's blood. So there are several instances of synecdoche. Here, Hampden stands for the brave champions of peasantry. Milton represents the class of great poets, while Cromwell is used to mean great political leaders. So they are representing a class. So individual for the class. There is a transferred epithet in dauntless breast. The epithet dauntless, which belongs properly to Hampden, is transferred to breast. This is also a case of synecdoche. Breast is used as a substitution for heart. Heart is the part of the breast which is whole. This is a case of the whole for the part. So actually the whole breast has been mentioned here, but the part heart is uh, heart is meant. Okay? So next is there is a periphrasis in the second line. The little tyrant of his fields withstood. Uh, Landlord is expressed in a roundabout way by the expression the little tyrant of his fields. There is another metonymy in the expression country's blood. Here, country is used to substitute the countrymen who live in the country. This is the case of the container for the thing contained. There is an epanaphora in the last two lines. The same word some is repeated at the beginning of these successive lines. Next, there is also one euphemism in "here may rest". The idea buried is here softened down through the expression "here may rest". Okay? So, next uh, our next question is, we look before and after and pine for what is not. Our sincerest laughter with some pain is fraught. Our sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thought. This stanza contains some important figures of speech. Number one, the expression "we look before and after" has an antithesis. Two contrasted words, before and after, are placed in a balanced form for the sake of emphasis. Next, there is an epigram in "our sincerest laughter with some pain is fraught". There is a contradiction in the apparent meaning of the expression, for how sincerest laughter is fraught with some pain. But the shocking statement has a deeper meaning. It indicates that laughter and sorrow go closer or go hand in hand in human life. Next, there is a hyperbaton in the above expression. The normal or the correct grammatical order of words should be "our sincerest laughter is fraught with some pain", but it has been inverted here. Next, the last line also contains an epigram. A contradiction is marked in the apparent meaning of the expression. Our sweetest songs cannot tell of saddest thought, but there is a shock that rouses an inner meaning that implies that sadness lies deep in all that is sweet in the human creation of art and letters. Next, the expression has also a personification. The abstract idea "song" is invested with the attributes of a living being in the verb "tell", that gives this a function of the living being. Next, there are hyperboles in "sincerest laughter, sweetest songs, and saddest thought", for the expressions or the things are exaggerated in all cases. Now I am moving on to the next question. Hail to thee, blithe spirit, bird thou never wert, that from heaven or near it pourest thy full heart in profuse strains of unpremeditated art. There is an apostrophe in the first line here, and a short and impassioned address is made to the skylark, the blithe spirit, a bird of nature, imagining this as present and listening to the poet. Next, this line has a periphrasis in the expression "blithe spirit". Here, the bird, or even if you don't know the name of the poem or you can't identify the bird properly, you just will write the bird, that here the bird is expressed in a roundabout way by "blithe spirit". Next, the stanza is full of exaggerated elements about the bird. Hence, This has a hyperbole. Next, there is a metaphor in pourest thy full heart in profuse strains of unpremeditated art. So here heart is compared to drink. These are unallied objects. The point of comparison is implied. Next, the last line has a transferred epithet. Here, the epithet profuse belonging properly to heart is transferred to the related element strain. Next, the last two lines have a periphrasis. The spontaneous, joyous music is expressed here in a roundabout way through the expression in profuse strains of unpremeditated art. So these are the figures of speech that we find in this passage. Next question is, scepter and crown must tumble down, and in the dust be equal made with the poor, crooked, scythe, and spade. So there are several figures of speech in the passage. Number one, there are two cases of metonymy. In the first place, scepter and crown are substituted for royalty. Scepter and crown are the signs of royalty or monarchical authority. In the second place, scythe and spade are substituted for peasants or farmers. Scythe and spade are the instruments of the farmers or peasants. So the first case is of the symbol or sign for the thing symbolized, and the second case is a case of second one is a case of the instrument for the agent. Okay, there is also a case of personification in the passage. In the first case, like scepter and crown are two inanimate objects, but they are invested with the attributes of a living being in the verb tumble down and in the expression be equal made. Okay. Next, there is a case of hyperbaton. Here, the regular grammatical order of words, I quote, and in the dust be made equal is changed into and in the dust be equal made. So it has been inverted. The correct grammatical order has been inverted. Next, there is a synecdoche in the expression dust be equal made. So here dust has been substituted for the grave, that is in the dust. This is a case of the whole for the part. There is also an alliteration. Here the letter S has been repeated at the beginning of nearly successive words scythe and spade. Okay, so these are the figures of speech that we find in this passage. And now the next one, though much is taken, much abides, and though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. So there are two cases of antithesis in the expression much is taken, much abides, and made weak by time and fate, but strong in will. So here two contradictory ideas are much is taken, much abides. In the first case, okay, they are placed in a balanced form, and the purpose is to emphasize on what abides. And in the second case, um, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will. So here the contrasted ideas are made weak by time and fate, and the other one is strong in will. They are placed in a balanced form, and the purpose is to emphasize the strength of will. There are also two cases of synecdoche. First one is strength. An abstract quality is substituted for strong men, concrete persons. This is a case of the abstract for the concrete. And the second case of synecdoche is in heroic hearts. So here, hearts is substituted for men. This is a case of the part for the whole. And next, there are two personifications also in the expression that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven and made weak by time and fate. Okay, in these two expressions, we find personifications. In the first place, strength. An abstract idea is given the attributes of a living being in the verb moved. Strength moved earth and heaven. And in the second place, time and fate, abstract ideas are invested with the attributes of a living being in the expression made weak. So time and fate made weak. Okay. So this is also a personification. There are two cases of hyperbole. In the first place, there is an exaggeration in the statement moved earth and heaven. And in the second place, one equal temper of heroic hearts is an exaggerated statement because it is too much to say that everyone will have equal temper. There are several cases of alliteration in the passage. Here, in the first place, the letter W is repeated at the beginning of nearly successive words in which, we, and we. Okay? And like which, we are. So which, we. W is repeated. In the second place, H is repeated in the words heroic hearts. H is repeated. Then the letter S is repeated in the words strive and seek, nearly successive words. Okay, and there is also a case of climax. Here, the ideas to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield are arranged in an ascending order of importance. Next, there is a pallilogia in the last line as the word to is repeated 4 times in the last line in the expression to strive, to seek, to find, not to yield. So, these are the figures of speech that we find in this passage. So, I hope you have understood the explanation of the figures of speech in all these passages. If you have any doubt, please feel free to ask me in the comment section. I shall definitely answer your queries, and please stay tuned for the next video as I have to upload another video for a few more important questions, and I shall do that certainly before your examination. So if you have found this video useful, then please like, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and keep watching, keep learning. Thank you all, and all the very best for your examination.